If you go to the next slide for me.
Sure.
Yeah, so not all women menstruate, and also not all people who menstruate identify as women. So there's a lot of discussion in the field of research about what the correct word is to use. I don't think it's something we've solved at this point. Personally, I prefer the term people who menstruate, and that's what I use in my work, just because menstruator feels a bit like there's more to me as a person than the fact that I menstruate. So even though it's a mouthful, I prefer people who menstruate. So today when I'm talking about it, I will mostly just refer to people, because that's easiest. So yeah, next slide please, Adam. So the other word I want to talk about is the word sanitary. So at the Super Project, we have been phasing this word out, as it was a term that was coined by the disposables industry to make periods seem really unhygienic and dirty so people would buy more products. So therefore, it's not a term that we use. You may see it on some of our paperwork just because it felt wasteful to bin a load of flyers, but we are generally like phasing it out. So now when I talk about our products and different period products, I use the words period or menstrual products, not sanitary products. So next slide please. Okay, so period poverty, what is it, why is it important? As with anything in research, there's no really one set definition, but I've highlighted here a variety of definitions of period poverty. So it can be defined as a lack of knowledge of menstruation and an inability to access the necessary sanitary materials. Also, a point of note, if I'm referencing somebody else, I'll use their language. So if they've used sanitary or women, that's what I use. So Plan International UK refers to a toxic trio. So cost, education and shame. And then quote at the bottom from Action Aid. So access to menstrual products, safe hygienic spaces in which to use them, and the right to manage menstruation without shame or stigma is essential for anyone who menstruates. So the point of this is it's not just about not being able to access period products. There is so much more to it than that. There is the elements of shame and stigma, as well as just a lack of education and a lack of knowledge, which is not just something that we associate with poorer countries. It is something we're seeing in the UK too, and we're seeing a massive rise of it, particularly in a post-COVID world. But also, arguably, our menstrual education is not particularly up to par either. So even though in, I think it was 2020, they changed the Department of Education rulings on it. So prior to that, it wasn't actually compulsory for schools to teach menstrual education. It was completely at the school's discretion. Now they have to teach something, but there's not really many guidelines on it. So quite often what happens is disposable companies will come along and say, we'll do it for free, and the schools kind of have no choice, so they go with it. And essentially it's just the disposable companies trying to get brand new as young as possible. So yeah, next slide please. So just some ideas about period poverty in the UK. So as you might see from some of these statistics, there's slightly mixed figures on it, and it's changing all the time. But so, for example, Tesco doubled the price of tampons in March 2022. This was not long after the tampon tax was removed. So despite the tampon tax being removed, they were still putting their prices up. I think their excuse at the time was the war in Ukraine. But here we are. So the number of people experiencing period poverty in the UK grew from 12% to 21% in 1 year alone, and that was in 2023. There's been various people trying to figure out the actual cost of menstruation, and various numbers and figures thrown around. Obviously it's going to vary massively from person to person. Some people menstruate much more than others, particularly if they have conditions like endometriosis where they're going through significantly more pads. Some people's periods only last 2 days, some last 5 days. So all these factors are going to vary in cost. But one figure was estimated at about £4,800 in a lifetime. But then when they factored in the additional cost of menstruation, so this is things like painkillers, underwear, chocolate, I think one of them put DVDs in that family, but here we are. They're estimated to be around £18,000. So basically you could almost put down a deposit on a house with the lifetime cost of menstruation. Next slide please, Adam. Okay, so this is more recent statistic. They now, Plan International UK, reckon that 25% of girls in the UK are struggling to afford period products. That is a quarter of girls. 500 million globally don't have the essentials they need to manage their period, and 20% of girls aged 14 to 21 in the UK have experienced teasing or bullying around their periods. So again, looking back at the shame around menstruation, I think there was a statistic during COVID as well that because of COVID restrictions and limits to going out to the shops, people felt even more exposed when it came to buying period products and therefore were more embarrassed. So even if they could afford it, they were less likely to go out and buy them just because they felt a bit more on the spot in quieter shops. And this is again exacerbated if the person who menstruates doesn't present as female, and therefore they can feel like they're being outed by going to buy period products. Next slide please. So what can we do about it? So little activity for you. So take a couple of minutes, and I just want you to have a think about, or maybe have a discuss with the person next to you. If for those that are joining us on Zoom, if you fancy putting some ideas in the chat, that would be fantastic. But just having a think about how we can support the people in our lives with their periods, not just in regards to period poverty. Off you go. Do we need to unmute Zoom?
I've not done those before.
Okay. So I think if we get some thoughts from the room first, and then we'll go to Zoom and see what they've been saying over there. So does anybody have any suggestions about how we can support people? Hand at the back.
Hi. So we were very much talking about the need for to teach kind of the basic facts and some of the like less intuitive facts about the process of menstruation, both in terms of like the biological but also the economic and material factors involved, and as neutral a way as it's possible to be to denaturalise the idea of shame that goes into the idea of menstruation. That it's not something we should, that should be considered dirty or like a sanitary measure or something. And we should also do so in a way that makes things as less exciting as possible, like because at the end of the day, like children need to be taught more things about like not just the fact that these are like natural bodies doing like completely ordinary things that people ought not to be ashamed of, but there's also no harm in either asking for or providing additional forms of like domestic labour, additional like labour in the workplace, or indeed care labour for people who might have more chronic conditions too. And dovetailing with that as well is making sure that workplaces are absolutely well stocked. Like I think that why is it so hard to find like I don't know like dedicated like sanitary products in like office spaces, for instance? Like they're always like, you know, like you usually get these like really horrible things that like sometimes like only find around like once in a blue moon in the ladies' toilets, you know, and like other things they're just expected to like go the distance, or people who menstruate are expected to go the distance. So it's about also trying to challenge cultures in workplaces as well, and to make them both like acceptable, and also to stress the idea of like this is going to happen regardless of like whatever your management policy is. So like either you get with the times and actually provide these things, or get out of the way.
Yeah.
Excuse the vulgarity.
So just to reiterate some of that point for those on Zoom, if you couldn't hear it. So we're talking about not just teaching the biological aspects of it, but also other aspects of menstruation. So just a point on that actually. So there was a report done by Plan International a couple of years, in 2018 I think, called Breaking the Barrier, that was about reducing shame. And what they found as like an accidental byproduct of their research is that a lot of the people they spoke to were saying our education is really poorly contextualised, like they teach us the biology, but then it's very like sort of disassociated from the body, so like they can't relate it to their own bodies, but also because it's not contextualised very well, like they want to know actually how to manage their periods. Like teach us how to get blood stains out, that would be fantastic. You know, things like that. Teach us the different methods of managing menstruation. So yeah, absolutely on that point. And then the second point was about like more support in the workplace. So again, absolutely. We are starting to see more organisations, I think, doing it. So one part of my thesis, which is kind of just a side quest for me really, is it's like this little treasure hunt I do, and I'm like collecting pictures to like put in my thesis of all the free period products I find out and about in the wild. So my friends think it's really sad because we'll be like at the pub and I'll be like, oh my god, I've got to get my phone, I found free period products in the toilet. And I found quite a few, and sometimes in unexpected places. So like most of the universities have them now, which is great. I found some in the Lincolnshire Poacher, that one surprised me because that's a bit of an old man pub, so I was like, wasn't expecting that one. We found them in Alea Casino, Golf Bang, the golfing place, found some in there. So yeah, we are starting to see them out and about more, which is fantastic. Any more points from the room? Go on.
On the subject of shame,
Yeah.
I don't know if you're aware of how the Samaritans was founded.
No.
Right. So this was back in the 50s. Chad Barra, he was a priest at the time, and he had to conduct the funeral of a young girl who had killed herself. And why had she killed herself? She had started menstruating. She knew nothing about it, and she thought that this was something terrible, you know, that was visited upon her, and she was too ashamed to talk about it to anyone. Killed herself. And this priest at the time said, this was only a child, but I want to make sure that this doesn't happen again, and you know, people should be able to have some way of some place that they could go to be listened to about things that are worrying them, and that's why he set up the Samaritans. It was because of that case.
Amazing. Yeah, I think like it's definitely, when I speak to like older generations out and about, that whole like nobody talked about it. So, and it comes up in the research a lot as well, of like people legit thought they were dying because they had like this suddenly bleeding and no context around it. So absolutely that. Thank you for teaching me something. That was amazing. Any more from the room? No? What have we got on Zoom, Adam? Should I just read them out? I carry extra products in case people I know may need them. Also have them freely available in toilets at work. Fantastic. I think like there's a real like sisterhood when it comes to period products. I've never once been in a female bathroom where someone said, has anyone got a period product, and someone hasn't been like, I got you, girl. So love that. My brother has 2 teenage girls. I wrote him a how to help with periods book to help him with what was coming up for them and him. Still not quite sure he uses it. Love that. I've got, at the end of the presentation, there is a further reading list, and I put one on there that's for helping people talk to their kids and stuff about menstruation. I remember a debate a few years back about tampon tax. I haven't followed it since, but I wonder what extra could be done to reduce the costs. Having products at workplaces definitely helps, like you said. I know it's helped me a few times, fantastic. Yeah, because I think with the workplace one as well, it's not always about period poverty. Like, sometimes you just get caught short. Like, I do what I do for a living, I track my periods, and sometimes it just catches you unawares and you are not prepared. So yeah, toilets is always a fantastic one. With the tampon tax, there was also an update to it a couple of years ago, where they added period pants to the tax reduction as well. I don't think they did it with all reusables. But yeah, there has been some progress on it. But yeah, the problem with these, like the removal of tampons and stuff, is that there's no incentive on organisations to actually pass that saving on to the consumer. So what's happening with a lot of these taxes is that the companies are just absorbing the savings for themselves. But I won't go on to a rant about that. 20 years ago, I worked in a call centre where loo breaks were monitored closely with no exceptions attitude. Hope that's changed, but I wouldn't bank on it. Absolutely. Yeah, especially, I mean, for anyone with menstruation, but especially for people that have like menstrual conditions and stuff as well. Like, I think it's outrageous, like policing how people use the toilets. We are starting to see more menopause policy in workplaces, but there's a lot of arguments and debate about having menstrual policies because the argument is, oh, people will abuse it. Anyway, yeah, I've heard similar about Amazon warehouses. Think this may still be true of lots of strictly monitored shift work, absolutely. I've worked in many jobs like that over the years. Yeah, so yeah, loo breaks and advocating for workplace, definitely. So yeah, thank you for everybody's engagement in that exercise, that was fantastic. So, oh, we've got more. The variation of periods from very light to very heavy. Some people and sometimes periods are brief, others are not. The impact on life can be devastating at the heavy and extended end. I'm not sure how to measure this, but obviously for some the cost financially, socially is probably twofold. Yeah, absolutely. There is no one way to have a period. Everybody is slightly different. Some people will be like clockwork, some people will not be. Like, some people are a couple of days, some people are a lot of days, some people are heavy, some people are light. Some people have like really severe pain. Like, I know for me, like day number 1, I'm dying. I am like not of use. So yeah, I've been known to do a supervisor meeting at uni on Zoom where I'm just there with my hot water bottle, like, just keep going, I'm fine, just everything's fine. So yeah, there's a massive variation. So just because you've had someone in your life that like just, you know, has never batted an eye about their period, like, doesn't mean that other people in your life won't be really struggling. And they may not have a diagnosis or anything about that either. We're still miles behind when it comes to things like endometriosis, PCOS, and understanding women's bodies. So there's still a long way to go. Any more, Adam, over there?
No, that's it.
So next slide. So these are some of my suggestions that I came up with. So talking with friends and family about menstruation. Make it normal. Talk about it like it's an everyday thing. I share way too much detail with my friends. Because the more you talk about it, the more normal it becomes. Like, I have to tell my supervisor, yeah, I'm dying of period cramps today, just thought you should know. Yeah, because the more we talk about it, the more normal it becomes, and the less shame there is about it. And so I think that's a really important one, and it's a really easy one to do as well, to just be having those conversations with friends and family. Even if you don't menstruate, keep some products in your bathroom for guests. I never thought of this one until I found out a friend did it, and I was like, that's incredible. Like, he's a gay man, like he does not need tampons in his house, but he keeps them just in case he's got anyone over that just happens to need them. So if you do frequently have friends over, it's a great suggestion to just keep some around. Donate, missed that typo. Donate products to food banks. Yeah, so most food banks do some kind of menstrual products, and it's something they usually struggle to get donations for. And as I say to people all the time, if somebody is using a food bank, if somebody is experiencing food poverty, chances are they're experiencing period poverty as well if they menstruate, but they're not going to talk about it. They're not going to tell you in the same way. So yeah, it's definitely donate to food banks. You can also donate to period charities or organisations. There's a lot that are struggling, so Bloody Good Period, who are one of like the big period charities, have just gone under. So that's another one. Bites the dust, unfortunately. Wear 'em Out, who are a reusable pad company, they've also gone under. So yeah, the organisations like this are really struggling at the moment. So if you can help them, if you are the type of person that does like regular charity donations, like consider donating to period charities. If you know how to sew and have some free time, we always like more volunteers at the Super Project because all of our pads are made by hand. I'll teach you how to make them. If I can do it, anybody can. And the other one, write to your local MP and advocate for better period support and education. The only reason that we now have free period products in schools is because of grassroots organisation. Some young girls decided enough was enough, and they made a big stink online on social media, and the Tory government actually passed it through Parliament. So it does work. So yeah, write to your local MP, because at the moment they seem to have forgotten that like periods exist, so there's not really anything happening around it right now, despite the rising levels of period poverty. Next slide, please, Evan. The World Health Organization wrote what they think needs to happen in terms of making sure everybody has menstrual rights. And they defined that everyone deserves to have menstruation rights. So within this, they sort of said that it needs to be framed as a health issue and not a hygiene issue. There's some researchers that theorise that we're essentially pushing Western ideas of hygiene onto other areas of the world. Personally, like, it's usually been put into like WASH initiatives with the UN, and they still use what I think is quite stigmatising language. Yeah, so it's a health issue with physical, psychological and social dimensions, and needs to be addressed in the idea of the life course. Because not only from menarche, which for those of you that don't know, that's the technical term for your first period, to well after menopause, you know, the menstruation and menstrual health affects people who menstruate from birth to death, essentially. So we need to be dealing with it from day one right through. A lot of initiatives are very focused on young girls and stuff, which is obviously super important, but like menstruation happens for all of your adult life, and then you have menopause, which is super fun, as I've heard. Secondly, to recognise that menstrual health means that women and girls and other people who menstruate have access to information and education about it, to the menstrual products they need, water, sanitation, disposal facilities, to competent and empathic care when needed, to live, study and work in an environment in which menstruation is seen as a positive and healthy, not something to be ashamed of, and that they're able to fully participate in life. So again, with access to education, like what we're finding now is because of limited education, people are going to social media and the internet, which is fantastic, and there's some fantastic sources online, but there is also, mind my language, a lot of shit. So there's a lot of people that are jumping on that misinformation bandwagon to sell products or drive crazy conspiracy theories and stuff. So we need to make sure that people are having correct and accurate information about their menstruation. So water, sanitation and disposal facilities. Again, when we apply this to different countries around the world, not all of them have the waste management systems that we do. So you can't just send them a load of disposables and call it a job done. Because they often in different countries like burn their waste, for example. Well, 90% of a sanitary pad is plastic. So it doesn't seem like a very good idea to be burning it. So yeah, there's no one size fits all when it comes to period poverty, particularly in different countries. So what's going to work in the UK is not necessarily going to work in, say, rural India. So thirdly, which is more of a government level one, but essentially to ensure that these activities are included in relevant sectoral work plans, budgets, and their performance is measured. So again, this is more about at the organisational level of the World Health Organisation and stuff, making sure that we are actively paying attention to this and monitoring it to make sure that we are providing menstrual rights to people across the world. Next slide, please, Anna. Okay, so how have period products evolved over time? So we're going to go on a little history lesson now because I think it's fascinating. Next slide, please, Anna. Menstrual products have massively evolved, particularly over the last 200 years or so. So disposables are a relatively new invention, yet they somehow appear to have taken over life. Next slide, please, Adam. Okay, so one of my favourite facts about menstruation is there's not a lot of mention about it in history, but one of the earliest mentions of menstruation in history is from ancient Greece. And the story goes that a woman was being harassed as she was walking down the street by a man, so she threw her menstrual rag at him. Icon. So yeah, that was one of the earliest historical mentions of period products. I love that. The next slide, please, Adam. So the Victorians. So this is when we started to see the first disposable products. From what we know, before that it was mostly managed with homemade rags, but this sort of varied across the world. So I believe it was Lister's were the first ones that, and Johnson & Johnson, who were the first ones to invent this. When they first introduced them, they didn't go over particularly well, because women were like, A, why would I do that when I can make my own at home, thanks to me. And the other thing is they didn't want to go into pharmacists and ask for period products because shame, stigma, etc. So they came up with some really creative solutions to this, including having little boxes in pharmacies so women could discreetly buy their period products and then just put the money in the box rather than having to actually speak to a pharmacist. But they also really started to drive this sanitary idea to try and push people into making the move to disposables over what the sort of reusable versions they've been using at home up until that point. Next slide, please, Adam. So once we hit the 20th century, it took until about the 1920s for pads to really start taking off, at which point we started to see much more innovation and change in period products. So the sanitary napkin in itself evolved quite a lot. So early sanitary napkins used belts. Some people may remember this. But basically there was no adhesive on them back then, so you would pin it to a belt that you wore. Personally, I think that would give you a massive wedgie, but I don't know. So we also saw the invention of the menstrual cup around the 1930s. However, it very quickly went bust due to rubber shortages in the Second World War. Made a comeback a few years after the war. There was also the invention of the tampon in the 1930s as well, and which the design of which has not really changed in the last almost 100 years. Next slide, please. So then we get to modern sanitary wear. So although there has been sort of smaller groups of people advocating for reusables, pretty much always, I would argue, including reusable pads that often were homemade, but also menstrual cups as well. They haven't really hit the mainstream. It's been mostly pads and tampons. I mean, I'm 31, and when I was in school it was like, here's a pad, here's a tampon, the end. So that was not that long ago. It's been really the drive for disposables. They have massively become the norm and sort of taken over life. I would potentially argue that we wouldn't have period poverty as we now see it if it weren't for the sort of overconsumption of disposables. It's become so normal that people don't necessarily have an alternative. But also it used to be that, you know, most people would have those sort of sewing, crafting skills to be able to make their own at home, but those have sort of died out over time. So people don't necessarily have the homemaking skills to be able to make their own now. Next slide please, Adam. So the plastic and chemicals in sanitary ware. As I mentioned, 90% of a menstrual pad is plastic. So this is not only bad for the environment, it's bad for your vagina as well. Basically it's not breathable, so it can lead to infections, rashes, etc. About 6% of a tampon is plastic, but they also have, if you have applicator tampons, they're usually plastic applicators. So there's a lot of plastic waste, and these are just terrible for the environment. So we do have a reusable alternative now that don't tend to have the chemicals in. I always find it really weird when you see on the adverts and they're like, it now has this fancy gel in it. I'm like, so you're just being really open about all the chemicals you're putting in them. Okay, that was a choice. They have a lot of stuff put in them, which varies from brand to brand. But again, it's not good for your health, for your body. There was obviously the whole issue in the 80s with the toxic shock outbreak that was caused by innovation, where they created a new tampon that was made out of these chemicals that was supposed to be like super absorbent, and like 40 people died. And I think there was like hundreds that got very severely ill, but it was a massive scandal at the time, and those particular tampons were discontinued, and it wasn't until that point that people really started looking at like what was in these products. But even now, there is not much legislation when it comes to menstrual products. They are not classed as a medical device. They don't have to declare what their ingredients are or what's in them. So even though they sort of claim to do safety research, essentially we don't find these things out until something's gone wrong, because there's not much regulation or control over the industry and what they choose to put in their products. Next slide please, Adam. So a few little facts about sanitary ware and the environment. So it's been estimated that in an average lifetime, a person who menstruates will dispose of 11,000 menstrual products. If they were lined up end to end, it would be the equivalent of 26 Big Bens. On average, litter pickers record 6 pieces of period waste for every 100 metres of beach, which equates to almost 2 million items when mapped against the UK coastline. One conventional sanitary pad takes around 500 years to break down. One pack of sanitary pads contains the same amount of plastic as 4 carrier bags. And it's estimated around 700,000 panty liners, 2.5 million tampons, and 1.4 million sanitary towels are flushed down the toilet every day. On top of this as well, there's also like millions of pounds worth of damage to the sewer systems in this country every year caused by blockages because of tampons and sanitary pads. And even though it's made very clear that they should not be flushed and they should be binned, again, we come back to shame and stigma. People feel too embarrassed to put it in the bin, so they flush it down the toilet, which does havoc for not only our sewer systems but also our beaches, the sea, etc. I remember being on a beach in Greece and there literally being a washed up tampon next to me. So yeah, next slide please, Ellen. So I also wanted to talk a little bit briefly about incontinence. So incontinence occurs in 50% of postmenopausal women in the UK. So the fun doesn't stop when you stop menstruating. So the monthly cost as estimated by the NHS is around £30 to £70 per month in incontinence products, which are essentially the exact same thing as a sanitary product. It's estimated that the NHS spends around 80 million per year on products, but it's worth pointing out that the NHS only provides products for very specific conditions, so therefore if you're just postmenopausal incontinent, the NHS probably won't cover it. So the need for products doesn't tend to stop just because you've stopped menstruating. As well as this, so this is more prevalent than, I believe, heart disease and depression in postmenopausal women, but again, nobody's talking about it because we don't like to talk about women's problems. Next slide please, Adam. So I just wanted to outline some of the reusable and sustainable products we have on the market, because for a lot of people it can be a bit overwhelming and you're like, where do I start, what's for me, and my sort of ethos when it comes to any period management products is it's all about what's right for you. So even though we at the Super Project obviously make reusable pads, I'm never going to say that that's the right choice for everyone. I'm also never going to say that sustainable products are the right choice for everyone, because they're not. Sometimes disposables are needed. So if we look at period poverty, for example, for most sustainable products, you need some kind of cleaning or washing facilities, access to boiling water, things like that. So if we're looking at, for example, homeless people, then disposables are always going to be the right option because they don't necessarily have the facilities to manage sustainable items. So there will always be some need for disposables, and there's a variety of reasons for this. But yeah, so if we start looking at cups, so Moon Cup is one of the leading brands at present, and I believe they do some donations of their profits to, I think, sanitary systems in Africa, but I might be wrong. So they're often made from soft medical grade silicone. They can hold 3 times more than a regular tampon, so they're latex free and hypoallergenic. You only need one. Once you've got one, you can just keep washing it. I believe they last between 5 and 20 years depending on the brand and depending on how well you look after it. So they can be easily cleaned and sterilised between uses. I experimented with this myself, trying to sterilise them in boiling water, but I'm also an idiot and would frequently drop it and have to start again. But you can now, online, get these little cup sterilising things. They're about 20 quid, and you just put a little bit of water in, pop it on, let it go, and it does the whole thing. Makes it super easy for you. So there are workarounds to make it easy for you. So the average cost is around £20. I think you can get some Boots own brand ones now for about £8. So if they last, depending on how long they last, you're looking like £1 a year. So these are one of the most cost efficient ones as well. They do take a lot to get used to. You have to be pretty comfortable with your own body to use these, so I usually don't recommend them for teenagers starting their first periods and stuff, because it's a lot to get used to. I think Moon Cup recommends it takes about 3 cycles to get used to using them. But most people that I come into contact that use them absolutely swear by them. They absolutely love them. So yeah, next slide please, Adam. So one of the really, really popular ones at the moment is period pants. There seems to be a massive craze that's taken off with period pants. They're available everywhere on the high street now. So Primark does them, M&S does them, John Lewis does them. You can get them all over. They tend to be less bulky than sanitary pads because they're basically pants with a few extra layers sewn in. Usually comprises of a high and wide gusset and multiple absorptive layers, available for multiple different flow types. So you can we'll do questions at the end, that's okay. So available for multiple different flow types, so light, medium, heavy, available in a range of sizes, and there's loads of different brands. Pricing on this one can be a bit weird. So the cheapest I think you can get is a pack of 3 from Primark for around 20 quid. I've seen some online for like £60 for one pair of pants, which I think is outrageous. And usually when I like look at the fabrics that they're made out of, like they're the same as the cheap ones. So yeah, always go for the cheap ones. Can potentially be used for low-level incontinence as well as periods, but I've never tested this out myself. So yeah, that's period pants. Again, very popular with younger menstruators as well. Because they're very comfortable. One thing with these is they're not as easy to change in public, because you've got to like fully strip off and change, and that's ball like no one wants to do that in a public toilet. But they're great for if you just like around the house. These are a fantastic one. Next slide please, Adam. Sanitary pad. I did not change the title on this spreadsheet. Anyway, so larger sizes can be a bit bulky, but often less so than disposable. So one thing that we found with our menstrual pads is that because they're made out of like natural fibre materials like cotton, they're much more breathable. So they don't feel as thick when they're on as like the disposable alternatives, like whereas some of the bigger disposables, it feels like you're wearing a nappy if you wear quite big sizes. You don't tend to get this with the reusable ones. So they're made of multiple layers to ensure absorptive and leak proof, available for multiple flow types. You can put them in the washing machine, which we love, super easy. So our cheapest pad starts at about £4. We have some of the cheaper ones on the market. Most of them start around sort of £7 sort of to £20 a pad, just depending on sizing. Ours can be used for both menstruation and incontinence, and we purposely do a very large size range because of this. Many suppliers also do charity work with the profits they make from these, including some of the samples I have here. So we have EcoFem, and I believe for the ones that they make, they donate to people in rural India, I think off the top of my head. And there's also Earthwise, that's another brand that do charity work with those. Next slide please, Adam. So just a little bit about us at the Super Project. So we believe that reusable period products can be the solution to period poverty, all while helping the planet too. So by this, I mean that when you provide disposables to someone living in period poverty, what often happens is next month they have to come back again. So reusables seem like a pretty solid option to me. Once you've given them a pack of reusables, it'll last them for anywhere from 5 to 20 years. So it's offering a long-term, sustainable, both financially sustainable and environmentally sustainable solution to period poverty. Just seems quite obvious to me. We designed our range of reusable period products to compete with disposables without having all the harsh chemicals and plastics. So our pads were designed by my mum, who's at the back. And so there are some pads on the market that are a much more environmentally friendly option, but we decided we wanted functionality as well as environmentally friendly. So they do have a layer in it called pull, which is, imagine like a bit of fabric with cling film on it. That's what pull looks like. And that's what stops it leaking through the other side. So there is some brands that are like super eco-friendly and they don't really have any pull in it, but they tend to be a bit leaky. So it's all about what you're like looking for in a product really when it comes to reusables. It's all about what works for you. So with our project, for every pad we sell, we donate one to someone in period poverty in Nottingham. All of our pads are made by volunteers. We are entirely run by volunteers. And the sales from our pads basically help us cover supply costs so we can keep donating. We usually do this through outreach with like other organisations. So we've just done a donation to a company that works with like disadvantaged young people. We've done donations to the Nottingham Hygiene Bank. Because we found out a couple of Christmas ago that they had a waiting list of 1,000 people for menstrual health over the Christmas period. So yeah, we do all sorts of donations to different organisations. We try never to target anyone and be like, are you in period poverty? Because that would just be really uncomfortable. So we sort of do donations via other organisations. We do occasionally do direct donations if we feel the need. So when we used to run a community hub in town, we had a guy come in one day and was like, can you help me? I'm a single dad and my daughter's just started her period and I don't know how to talk to her about it. So we got you. And we're giving him some advice, and then we gave him some pads and stuff to help get him started. So yeah, and we're working to do more outreach and education to help people have a better understanding of their periods and menstrual health. So yeah, next slide please. Any questions? Go on, I know you've been waiting.
Just me.
Go on.
No, I was going to say, with the period pads,
Yeah.
isn't that I would imagine for the wearer kind of unhygienic? I'm just thinking from the wearer's perspective, because if you're bleeding down there and it's there would be you would feel it and there would be a scent and things like that. I'm thinking from the wearer's perspective.
Yeah, so I think it depends a lot on the brand and what they're made out of. So I'm a bit of a pessimist when it comes to things like this, and I think a lot of companies are jumping on the bandwagon, and you can see that when you look at what they're making their products out of. So it's been a thing for generations where they're don't put nylon down there because it causes infections, it's not very breathable. And then if you look at some of these period pants brands, they're made of nylon, which just says to me that they don't really care about people, they're just trying to make profit off this trend of period pants. But also when it's not breathable, it's also going to fester, I guess. But bleeding and periods in themselves aren't unhygienic. It's more about are you changing things regularly enough? Are you using good materials in the products you use? So also with natural fibre materials used in menstrual products, they do something called moisture wicking, which basically means it pulls it away from your skin and into the fabric. Whereas things like polyester, nylon, which are essentially plastic, they don't do that. So you do tend to feel you're sitting in it a little bit, which is
that's what I mean.
It's not fun. It's not fun.
Chafe and maybe kind of chafing and
I tend to find that's worse with disposable products, particularly with disposable pads, because they are basically all plastic.
And probably because it's closer, right?
Yeah.
At least if it's with the pads, it gets to kind of fall down a little bit.
Yeah.
Some distance. But
Yeah.
I imagine with pads, it's right there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So again, this is where it's all about the individual product, what it's made out of, and how it works. So we'll just go to the question on Zoom. How do period pads fix? Good question. So we use little snapper buttons. I don't know if you can see this on Zoom. Probably not. Just about. So these are little snapper buttons. So they kind of attach the same way that the adhesive does on disposable ones, I guess, but they just pop underneath and then pop off again. Hope that answers your question. Other questions?
I was just going to ask, to have a bag to put it in, if you're changing in public, do you end up doing
Yes. Yes, so the ones we do, we make little waterproof bags to go with them. Most brands of pads do some kind of waterproof bag that goes with them, so you can sort of pop them in a bag, take it with you. While you're on the go, yeah, most brands do something like that along those lines. I think most Moon Cup, even the cups do as well. The period pants brands don't tend to. But again, I feel like that's when you're less likely to change in public. So again, they're better if your pants tend to be better if you're just like hanging at home rather than changing on the go. But yeah, in a moon cup, just like a handy little bag for you for when you're on the go. Any more questions? Thoughts? Ideas?
Have you seen the new style inverted commas of moon cup, which is not moon cup, it's like boobies?
Like the discs?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm going to put my sample on. Hang on, I've got a sample of those. So yeah, discs are the new trend that's coming in. I've never dared use one, they scare me a little bit if I'm being perfectly honest.
I bought one a few months ago and it's
Yeah.
in the box. I'm a bit like,
Yeah, it's been in my cupboard for like 2 years. So this is a menstrual cup. Hang on. This is a cup and this is a disc. So a cup sits basically right at the bottom of your vaginal canal. A disc sits right up by your cervix, so it's quite far in. And personally, that scares the bejesus out of me. I'm like, what if I can't get it out, and then I have to go to like A&E and be like, it's stuck, help me. Yeah, so there are other options that are coming out. Like some people do like those and do find them quite comfortable. It's all about personal choice. My number one rule, especially since I started doing my doctoral research, is it's about people being able to have autonomy over their own menstruation. So that means that they have access to products, they have the appropriate education, they are free from shame so they can make the choice that's right for them and not a choice that's dictated by circumstances. So I'm never going to be like, you should do reusables or you shouldn't do disposables, because it's about what's right for the individual and then making the right choice for them, whatever that may be. If it's a reusable one, fantastic. But yeah, it's all about people having the choice to make the choice that's best for them. Anything else? Anything on Zoom?
The discs remind me of a contraceptive cap.
We had the same discussion before,
Which
yeah.
work exactly the same way, and
Yeah.
the big advantage of those are, which I presume must be the same with the disc, is you can have sex without any mess.
Yeah, yeah.
So if you're wearing one of those discs, presumably,
Yes.
whether or not we want it for contraception.
Yes, I believe it is part of their like marketing. I can't remember, it's been a while, but yeah, I think these are like sex safe as well. Cups are kind of sex safe as long as you're not doing any kind of penetration. But yeah. But also, you know, we're removing the shame from period sex as well. With all the shame, there's actually quite a substantial body of research on period sex, like which I find quite interesting. But that's the thing people go to. But yeah. Any other points, questions?
I was just going to say, can you like debunk some stuff I've heard from like period?
Go for it. I'd like to point out I'm not a medical professional and therefore I can't offer medical advice, but I can tell you what's normal and what's not.
Well, I would use it with these sorts of things. Like people said that it caused uterus prolapse because obviously it suctions. So they were saying like over time it slowly just like pulls your inside out. And I was like, I don't know if that's true or not, but it sounded kind of real, and so I was like, oh, I have no idea.
So with cups, there's a lot of claims out there about them, and there's not. I'm not going to lie and say there's like huge amounts of research on it because there isn't. So there has been some cases of like prolapse and stuff. There's also some advice saying that you shouldn't use them if you've got an IUD because the suction can like suck your IUD out. But again, the advice is really mixed on that, like, and there's no sort of clear answers on what there is or what you can and can't do so far. A lot of it, I would say, comes down to like how you use it. So making sure you're using properly, like so because they work by suction, you're supposed to essentially put a finger in and unsuction it before you pull it out. So I imagine in the cases of prolapse, what's happening is people are just trying to yank it out, like, which is just an accident waiting to happen. So again, it comes to like using it properly. So I would assume, but this is a guess, that as long as you're using it properly and following the instructions, then that shouldn't be an issue. And and again, it's user error that is likely to be causing these issues. One thing I love about Moon Cup is in their packaging, they have an incredibly detailed instruction guide, including what to do if you can't get it out. And rule number 1 is don't panic, take a deep breath, which I love that they've got pictures and everything, which I think is brilliant that they've so clear about how to use it.
Can I just say there's
Yeah.
holes in Moon Cups as well, so it's not like it's a solid thing that there's a suction that, so that it's got little pinprick holes,
Yeah.
so it doesn't leak, but you have to make sure that you kind of clean it out mid and before and after, so it doesn't clog, because that helps with the removal as well. If you've never seen one, if you have a look.
Yeah, I've got samples at the front if you want to have a look.
You
You don't have to do it right now, but at the end.
Fill it with water, I'll put one hand on the top and squeeze it, and then you get a jet back.
That's smart. That's an
Yeah, I kind of test that it does really take a couple of cycles just to get used to it and get used to getting it out. But yeah, practice makes perfect and all that jazz.
Yeah, so
You've seen it,
yeah.
Any more thoughts, questions? Do you have anything on Zoom or done?
Nobody on Zoom is interested now?
No. Fine.
There's something on there.
Yeah, another question on Zoom.
Oh, yeah, another hand at the back.
Sorry, so I was just wondering regarding the potential for reusable materials and everything, and I was also wondering if you could potentially offer some advice about what certain folks who might have chronic conditions or might be more immune compromised, some people. Are there things in, say, reusable menstruation equipment that can help with? They can help with people with conditions that tend to disproportionately affect people who menstruate, like fibromyalgia, or endometriosis, or in some cases ME as well. Because in my experience, those things can often be quite debilitating as well, because they can also potentially a lack of low breathability can also be a driving force of certain kinds of health issues as well.
Yeah. So I think there's definitely an individuality to it of trying different products and seeing what works for them. I think in terms of chronic conditions related to menstruation, so a colleague of ours, I'm sure she may be here, I'm sure she'll want to tell you the story, but essentially she was using our largest pads that are designed for incontinence, and she was bleeding through them within an hour, which is outrageous, FYI. So she went to A&E and was I am having extremely heavy bleeding, and she was able to take the pad with her and be look at this. And she actually managed to get a diagnosis of endometriosis, which usually a diagnosis for endometriosis in the UK takes 7 years because we don't take women's pain seriously. Particularly if you're, you have very heavy bleeding and stuff with things like endometriosis, reusable pads can not only be better coverage for you, but also save you a small fortune, because when people are having these really severely heavy bleeds, it is costing them a lot more money every month. So it also just takes the stress away. I basically did the full switch to reusables probably 2 or 3 years ago now. And one thing I love is no matter what, they're always just there in the drawer. There's no oh crap, I've started my period, I've not got anything in, somebody run to the shop. They're always just there. And it's just one less thing to think about and one less stressful thing, because it's always just available. And that's what we want for our periods to be as least stressful as possible. So I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely.
Yeah? Fabulous. Okay, do you do nighttime period pads for extra flow? Leakage is a major issue for people on bedding at times, that kind of thing, creeps out at night. Yeah, absolutely. So, hang on, got an example. So we don't necessarily say this is a nighttime pad, this is a daytime pad, etc. Because everyone's flow is a little bit different. We just go from extra small to extra large, and then each pad is either daily, regular or heavy. So this is XL heavy, so they're mainly designed for incontinence, but they do work for extremely heavy periods as well. In comparison, this is a small, so they're very large, and should theoretically prevent leaks. I did do some water tests on our smallest pad, which is an extra small, and they did take about 20 ml of water before they started leaking. But obviously I'm aware that like period blood is very different consistency. But yeah, generally we do huge sizes, and I think we have like 14 different sizes in total. So we cover a lot of ground over those sizes to find the size that works for you. Anything else?
That's it.
Fabulous. Well, if anyone's got anything, go on.
I just wanted to say something about, you mentioned postmenopausal incontinence.
Yeah.
This is connected to how many children people have had, and whether they're given birth vaginally. It's going to predispose you to a bit of urinary incontinence. Now, the industry makes a lot of money out of selling people these sort of panty liners.
Yeah.
And they've done a very effective job of persuading people that they should have these in their hands every day, regardless of whether they're menstruating or not.
Yeah.
And not deliberately steering attention away from the cause and the possible things you can do about it. In fact, there's a lot that women can do to cure themselves of mild urinary incontinence.
Yeah.
And you can go to your doctor and you can get instructed in exercises to do that would get rid of this.
Yeah.
But the industry has no incentive
Yeah.
to let women know that there is something they can do about this, because that would get rid of one of their income streams.
Yeah, and the latest research is that like vaginal estrogen can basically cure it as well. So yeah, but they're not necessarily. It depends on your GP how willing they are to give that out right now. But I think there's shortages as well, in the same way that there's shortages on HRT. So the availability of it is another thing. But yeah, that is, from what I'm aware, showing to be quite helpful.
Well, at a very simple level, pelvic floor exercises, you can find information about those on the internet, and then just do it yourself. Yeah, absolutely. And it's amazing, like, again, that level of shame, so like people don't talk about it, but 50% of postmenopausal women, like, that's a wild statistic for me, like that many people are experiencing it, and we're not talking about it. So
Periods, if you have really heavy periods, you can double up, so you can use like tampon or meal cup and pad.
Yes.
Just people might not realise.
Yes. So doubling up's always a good shout. I get a lot of customers with the Super Project who use cups but just want like a panty liner for like extra support. We had it a few years ago where we went to an Extinction Rebellion rally in London, and I was on my period, and I was like, oh god, I don't know if there's going to be any toilets or anything like this. So I literally had like a pair of period pants and then an extra pad on top just in case. But thankfully that we did find a toilet, although you did have to pay to get into it, so don't get me started on that. Which I was like, this feels like this is targets women more than it does men, but here we are. So
You could treble up, meal cup,
you could just, you could get real crazy with it, like, but yeah, doubling up's always an option. Any other points? If anyone's got anything they want to ask me but doesn't like want to say in front of the room, you can like come and ask me at the end as well, that's fine. Yeah? Well, thank you everybody for coming, I really appreciate it. I hope that you've all found it useful and not just me waffling for however long it's been. So thank you.
Yes, thank you very much to Marianne, not Marianne, sorry. I was talking to someone called Marianne earlier today. But thank you very much to Mel Newton from the Super Project and Executive Committee Officer of the Nottingham Green Party for giving that extremely informative and enlightening talk. And thank you to everyone in the audience and everyone on the Zoom call for your contributions tonight. We had a very interesting discussion.